Today we're talking about the French Revolution, 1789 to 1815. Now, with the American Revolution, it was more of a conservative revolution. Keep in mind, we're only on our second constitution post-revolution. The French, I believe, are on 6 or 7, something like that, maybe more, maybe 8. But the French Revolution is very virtuous, very liberal-oriented, and it is going to be a bloodbath. And this proves out to be, in history, more what revolutions tend to look like, not the American Revolution, where it's more of a stable revolution. 1 or 2 governments are written after, and relatively not as much bloodletting as the French Revolution. But the French Revolution proves to be, throughout our history, our world history proves to be the way how most revolutions turn out. So, here are the stages of the French Revolution. I believe you're going to have an activity on this, and all you got to do is copy this down. But these are the 9 stages to the French Revolution. The aristocratic revolt from the Estates General, or from the States General until the fall of the Bastille, the National Constitution or Constituent Assembly, the Constitutional Monarchy, the Radical Stage, the Gordonian Convention, the Jacobin Convention, the Directory, and of course Napoleon. So, with this PowerPoint, when you see something bold and underlined, that's the note you need to get. So, if you look here, basically causes of the French Revolution, the Enlightenment idea, of course, the economic crisis. They had some bad harvest there. Bread prices rise, and we have some hard winters in France. Their financial crisis, basically, the bankruptcy of the administration. The Third Estate was enabled to pay more taxes, and only exit was that the privileged estates would pay. But they refused to do this, so the king invoked the Estates General order to convene them so they can change the tax system to where the poor who can't afford to pay taxes were going to pay more. You need to understand the American Revolution plays a key role in creating the French Revolution, because the French help us win our independence, and they spend a lot of money in helping us win our independence, and it would lead to them declaring bankruptcy. So, in the beginning, in 1789, in May, the Estates General met. The Third Estate, most of them are from the bourgeoisie or middle class. They asked to change the voting system from a 1 vote for each estate to the vote for each person. The other estates didn't agree to this representative form of estate. The Third Estate gave themselves the name the National Assembly, and they break off, and they're going to do their own thing. And some nobles and many clergy joined with them, as you see. So, in 1789 in May, the Estates General met. The Third Estate, which most of them were the bourgeoisie or middle class, asked to change the voting system from the vote for each estate, which means there's 3 votes. The First Estate, Second Estate, Third Estate, each one gets 1 vote, to the vote for each person, meaning each person had a vote. And the problem with this is the Third Estate was more numerous than the first 2 estates. The first 2 estates, the First Estate's the clergy, the Second Estate's nobles. So the nobles and the clergy would always gang up on the Third Estate, and it would be a 2-to-1 vote. So the Third Estate's asking for a change in voting. The other estates do not agree to this. The representatives of the Third Estate gave themselves the name the National Assembly, which represented the people of France. Not many, but some nobles and some clergy joined them, and this sets the stage for your French Revolution. In the beginning, the king was shut. When the king shut them from the Treaty of Versailles, they took to the tennis courts, And on June 20th, 1789, they pledged themselves not to separate until they give France a constitution. The revolution, of course, has begun. And this would be the famous the famous tennis court oath that they would pledge. Basically, they're going to write a constitution. They're not going to break up. On July 14th, the royal prison, it was an old building, about 200, 300 years old, built in the 1500s, is basically a political prison. It's called the Bastille. On July 14th, it's stormed by the people because they thought the king was wanted to detain the assembly. He actually has an army marching in from Switzerland because he couldn't trust his army, because his army was made up of a lot of third estate people. So he has this army coming in. The people feel that he's aimed this army at them, so they storm the Bastille, gather weapons, and they fight off this army. So this date is considered the real start of the revolution and is celebrated today, every July 14th, like our Independence Day on the 4th. So, the National Constituent Assembly, 1789 to 1791. While the representatives wrote the Constitution on August 26, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen was approved, which signaled the end to the ancient regime, meaning the king. It was the moment in which the estates disappeared forever. The economic crisis led to a radicalization of political atmosphere. In October of 1791, Louis XVI was forced to move from his home in Versailles to Paris to approve the first Constitution of France. And when he does this, when he leaves his palace in Versailles, he'll never return to his home. He'll be in Paris, which Paris is 5 miles away, but he never went back. So the constitutional monarchy, 1792 to 1792, after Louis XVI approved this constitution, he dedicated all of his interest in denying all the new laws. So the new assembly made these new laws, and he denies every one of them. Austria and Prussia declared war on France in 1792. Meanwhile, the king attempted to flee and get out of France unsuccessfully. And as you see, he's captured by the revolutionaries, and the Austro-Prussians threatened the French if they touched their king. So now you have two Republican political parties, the Gourdons, the moderate Republicans, and the Jacobins, the more radical. You need to know the Jacobins were led by this guy, Robespierre, Maximilien Robespierre, and he's going to end up taking political control. So, the Gourdon Convention, 1792-1793, the Legislative Assembly was replaced by a more radical one called the National Convention. The Republic was proclaimed due to the royal attitude. Louis XVI, of course, will be executed, beheaded in January 1793. War was declared on Great Britain, and France became involved in wars with several countries against the counter-revolutionaries inside of France. So Maximilien Robespierre sets up this Committee of Public Safety, and it's basically an institution in order to judge counter-revolutionaries. Who is not a revolutionary? Because if you're not a revolutionary, they're going to put you to death. This leads to the Reign of Terror, the Jacobin Convention from 1793 to 1795. And as you see, basically the new constitution's approved. Maximilien Robespierre establishes a maximum for prices in some basic articles like bread. With Jacobins and Robespierre, all political enemies were exterminated, meaning they were beheaded. This period is called the Reign of Terror. It was a dictatorship, but what's going to end this is a coup d'etat. Moderates took over the government, and they're going to execute Robespierre. What happens here? Basically, Robespierre's a lawyer, and he leads this committee of public safety, and he gets, if you're just an average person going to work and you're not a revolutionary, he could see you as an enemy of the state and he would execute you. Interestingly enough, these moderates rose up and they brought him up on false charges of enemy of the state, and they were going to have him executed the night before his trial, which, by the way, you were tried and executed the same day. His trial would have been in the morning and he was executed in the afternoon. The night before his trial, he tries to commit suicide and he blows the left side of his jaw off, and his ear, and he lives. So they wrap him up in bandages. He doesn't have a tongue. He's bleeding profusely through his bandages, and he has to listen to the charges being read against him, and he has to try to defend himself in court, and he can't talk. So ironically enough, the man who was a lawyer and who was so eloquent at putting people to death couldn't save himself. So he's executed. We move on. By the way, the guillotine, invented, I think his name is John Guillotine. He was one of the first customers of his invention. He was actually one of the first ones to be put to death with his invention. And the reason they come up with the guillotine was it was more efficient and more equal in punishing people. So the Directory comes to power. The convention was replaced by the Directory in 1795. It's a moderate form of government. You need to know that, as you see, they were a very corrupt government. It was run by 5 men. In 1799, a coup d'etat, which means a stroke of state, was led by Napoleon, and that basically puts an end to the Directory. Pictures of Napoleon. Here's your timeline for Napoleon. Napoleon starts his military service, I believe, in the late 1780s. I know by 1792 he's starting his rise to fame. The Directory notice him, and they make him, they promote him through the rise of the military. So here is Napoleon. He has 2 different stages: the Consulate stage of 1799 to 1804, and the Empire stage from 1804 to 1815. So, if you read down here, he introduces several revolutionary ideas in his reforms. He introduced a new civil code. He improves education. He is the first European leader to make free public education to all, and he created a national bank of France. Napoleon declared himself emperor in 1804 and crowned himself emperor. Keep in mind, he does this. Like, he is seen as a liberal despot. He's seen as an enlightened figure. He sees himself as a liberator, and for the most part, he is seen a liberator, but later in his empire, he's going to be seen as a dictator. So some states were invaded easily, but others, like Spain and Russia, they offer resistance, and they're going to see him as a dictator. First big mistake Napoleon makes as a leader is his 1806 Continental System. He's unable to bring Britain to its knees. He wants Britain out of the way. Britain's going to be a thorn on his side, just like Britain's going to be a thorn in Hitler's side. It's an island, so it's hard to invade. Admiral Nelson dashes Napoleon's plans by sinking most of the French fleet at the Cape of Trafalgar near Spain, and Admiral Nelson is revered to this day. Napoleon then decided to blockade British ports. He orders all trade with Britain to stop, and this is called the Continental System. It's going to backfire on him, though. We'll pick up with the end of the French Revolution on part 2. Here is your Continental System.